Hello everyone and welcome on De Papier de Rêve channel. I'm Ursula and today I will be experimenting with you with some gouache and watercolor. I'm painting with gouache for quite a long time now and I always wanted to see what I can do with watercolor and gouache mixed together. But here today I will be experimenting with a little bit of an abstract scene and see how they mix together on a wet paper. I've started this piece by drawing with a wax pencil, a wax white pencil, in order to have some marks on my paper already, and I have more texture to it, so it will be a little bit more interesting at the end. And I'm starting to add a lot of pigment on my paper already. I'm working here today with Payne's Grey and Lunar Blue. This is two strong colors, quite dark if you are concentrating it very nicely. And I wanted that darker color so that my white gouache will be seen a little bit more easier. I've chosen these two colors for a very specific reason. Payne's Grey is a flat color, a very nice dark grey with a little bit of blue in it, so it's a cool grey. And Lunar Blue is a very granulating blue color, and I am really eager to see what the texture would like in association with white gouache. And now I'm starting to add some white gouache in the wet colors, and I try to keep my paper very wet so that the white gouache will blend and will flow a little bit easier. And one thing I have noticed right away is that the white gouache will flow a little bit better if the paper is really wet. The drier the paper, the lesser flow it will have in the white gouache. And I have to say that I'm a little bit surprised for the texture created between white gouache and very dark watercolor. I was expecting very strong texture with some lines of white going into the darker colors, but no, everything is really soft and the white gouache is blending really softly in all the dark colors. And this particularity makes me wanting to paint some sky with very strong blues in watercolor and the clouds painting in white gouache. I think it will be a really nice effect of something very foggy, very soft, and I think it will make a really great texture of clouds. I'm very used to work with watercolor when colors are really flowing through the paper and moving quite a long way from the start of where you paint it. It can move very, very far away from that point. But here with gouache, it's moving way less and it makes a more cloudy and a more foggy texture, and I think it's quite interesting in that way. This painting is really, really abstract, of course, but you can really see how the white gouache interact with the watercolor and how soft all the edges are. I think it's really nice and I like this effect a lot. And this picture is almost finished. I'm just adding a little bit of Aussie red gold in this painting because all the colors were very cold and I wanted to add a little bit of a warmer color so that there is some kind of balance in this painting. And I wanted to see also if Aussie red gold would interact with the gouache underneath. And it's not interacting a lot. The Aussie red gold is moving like a watercolor painting. It's flowing into the wet area, but it's kind of stop around the edges of white gouache. So it's not mixing very much with the gouache. And after this first experimentation, I just want to make some more experimentation with white gouache. I think I have more to discover, but I will do that just after I will talk you through for the supplies I've used today. For the brushes, I'm using Princeton Neptune 1/2 inch and an Escoda Último number 8. And for the colors, I'm using Aussie Red Gold, Lunar Blue, Lavender in the next painting, and Payne's Grey. And of course I'm using white gouache from Winsor Newton. And my paper for the first attempt is Canson Héritage in cold press, and for this attempt right now it's Saunders Waterford in rough. And I'm starting this second attempt in almost the same way as my first attempt, with lots of Payne's Grey. I want it to be really dark because I want a stronger effect with white gouache. And Payne's Grey is a very transparent color, and I wanted to see also the difference between opaque watercolor and gouache. And I have one opaque watercolor, which is Lavender, in my palette. In this second attempt, I'm trying really hard to have the more concentration of pigments in the darker colors, so that the white gouache will appear even whiter and even stronger against those dark colors. And I wanted to see if I was able to get this stronger texture effect I was looking for. And it's not very strong, it's very soft, and maybe it's because of the wetness of the paper. Maybe everything was a little bit too wet, and my white gouache still appear very soft against my watercolor. And here now I'm adding a little bit of my opaque watercolor in the color Lavender to see how it will react in difference with white gouache. And I think that this opaque watercolor has much more flow into it than my white gouache. The Lavender is going a little bit further away in the other wet color in the area than the white gouache. For both of my experimentation today, I was using only synthetic brushes, because I think that synthetic brushes are more adequate with gouache than watercolor. It contains a bit less water and pigment, so there is less waste with gouache. And I like the softness also of the synthetic brushes with gouache and watercolor. These two experimentations are very rich in information for me. They are not ready to frame picture at all, but that's not the important point here. I've learned a lot with those two experimentations about the media I use, and I'm really happy to be able to play a little bit more and to know a little bit more on those two mediums, which are watercolor and gouache. And it's really an important thing to know your paint and what they are able to do. And painting those watercolor painting or gouache painting, I don't know how to call them, is really interesting. It will learn you a lot to make those experimentation. And from those two little paintings, I have a lot more idea to paint with watercolor and gouache. Like I said at the beginning, I want to try to paint a sky with lots of clouds in gouache. The sky will be in watercolor and the cloud will be in white gouache, for example. And I also want to paint a painting with my first layer in watercolor very loosely, and then add my other layer with gouache and see how it will interact and what I can build with this mix of transparent painting and opaque painting. And even if these two paintings are not worth framing, I think they are kinda look cute, no? What do you think? And this video is now ending. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like it, and I hope you will try also to make some experimentation on your own. And please check the blog post for more information about this painting, and tell me what you think in the comments. See you soon.